Looking for a way to use up those butternut squash you grew this year that doesn't involve soup? Well, look no further, because these brown butter butternut squash dinner rolls aren't only fantastic because of their alliterative title, they also pair perfectly with practically any piece of poultry, pork, or whatever other portion pop up on your plate this holiday season. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Taylor, and like many from-home workers, I have been making sourdough bakes ever since the earliest days of the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. If you want to get a free printout of some of the best sourdough tips and tricks that I have picked up over the years, go ahead and hit the link in the description. Now onto the bake. You'll need 500 grams of all-purpose flour, 100 grams of active sourdough starter, 200 grams of milk, 200 grams of butternut squash that has been cooked and cooled, 10 grams of salt, 40 grams of honey, and 56 grams or 4 tablespoons of browned and cooled butter. To get started, feed your sourdough starter at least 4 hours before you mix your ingredients. You need the starter to be nice and active, so make sure that it's bubbly and roughly doubled in size. For this, I'm using a 100% hydration rye flour starter. Then preheat your oven to 375 degrees and prep your butternut squash. To do this, using a very sharp knife, remove the top and the bottom of the squash so that it can stand upright without wobbling dangerously as you slice straight down the middle. Once you've halved your squash, remove the pulp and seeds and save them to grow butternut squash next year. Place your 2 halves on a baking sheet face down and bake for an hour or until golden brown on the bottom. Then set these aside to cool. While your squash is cooking, you can start to brown the butter. To do this, put 4 tablespoons of butter into a pan and melt it over medium heat until fully melted. Once it has melted, turn down the heat to medium-low and stir or swirl the butter in the pan to keep it from sticking and burning onto the pan. Keep an eye on it until the milk solids start to caramelize. You can start seeing little brown flecks in the butter. And at this point, take the butter off of the heat and let it cool at room temperature. Once your sourdough starter is bubbly and active and your butternut squash has cooled to be able to handle with your bare hands, you can begin to mix your wet ingredients. Start by weighing out 200 grams of squash and then mash it up real smooth. I like to do this in the bowl of my stand mixer so that I don't have to transfer it later. Add your milk, honey, and salt and whisk it up to combine. Then add your starter and whisk that thoroughly to combine. Finally, add in your flour and using a wooden spoon or a spatula, or your bare hands if you're adventurous, mix it all up so that it's fully incorporated and there's no flour pockets in the dough. It'll be pretty dry at this point. Cover this up and let it sit in a warm place for 30 minutes. After the dough has hydrated a bit, put your stand mixer bowl in place and start kneading the dough on low. For mine, that's around 2. Then once it's formed into a ball, start adding your cooled brown butter. You'll want to drizzle this in approximately 1 tablespoon at a time to give the dough time to absorb the fat. Use a spatula to get all of the butter off of the pan. Once all of the butter has been added, turn up the speed to medium, mine is around 4, and then let it knead for 8 to 10 minutes. As always, check it after 8 minutes to see if it breaks apart super easily. You're trying to develop the stretchiness of the gluten to get a nice chewy dinner roll texture. If it breaks apart immediately when stretched, it needs to go longer. If you can stretch a small piece apart and it doesn't break apart, you're good to go. I like to sort of form the dough into a ball shape in the bowl so that it rises evenly, and then just cover it up, pop it in a warm spot until it's puffed up quite a bit, roughly doubled in size. As with every bake, this will take a different amount of time depending on the temperature in your fermentation zone and whatnot. We let ours go for 8 hours. You can always stop fermentation from happening by just popping it in the fridge. Once it's ready, plop out the dough onto your clean workspace and form it into a nice ball shape. Then cut it in half and then quarter each half so that you have 8 total pieces. Then form these into balls by folding the sides into the center and then rolling them with a cupped hand. Then place them in a buttered baking dish and cover them with plastic wrap. And let these ferment for another hour or 2 until they've increased in size by around 50%. Once they're ready, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and prepare an egg wash for the rolls by combining 1 egg with a tablespoon of water. Right before the rolls are ready to go in the oven, paint on the egg wash. Let them bake for 20 to 25 minutes. Check them at 20 and rotate as needed for even cooking. They should be browned slightly on the top. Then let them cool for 30 to 60 minutes before diving in. These rolls are a phenomenal companion to just about any Christmassy dinner. They've got a springy, soft texture, and the caramelized butter and butternut squash make these truly comforting. It's a great use of a seasonal veggie. Let us know what you think about this one in the comments, and make sure to check out our free sourdough tips and tricks download in the description, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the other amazing bakes that we've got coming up in our 12 days of sourdough this Christmas season. Merry Christmas.